Hello, my name is Jo McRobbie and I'm the Social Value Delivery Partner for Acciona on the North London Heat and Power Project Energy Recovery Facility. So in this session, we're going to look at proposal writing and the kind of top tips in relation to developing proposals, grant applications. So we're going to look at two key areas: developing your proposal and then effective ways to present your work and the impact that you have. Okay, so we look first at developing your proposal. Now, as a construction company, we're involved in a lot of tendering and bidding. So bidding. So we do a lot of proposal development. So, and it's the same, no matter the size or the scale of the proposal that you're trying to develop or you're working on, the same principles apply. So you always have to start with understanding what is being asked. So with any grant process or bid tendering process, you're given instructions. So you will have guidelines attached to that, a set of questions that you need to respond to, or a format in which you need to respond to. So critically, you need to get hold of all of those, make sure you have them, and that you read and understand what the guidelines are. They're going to give you an understanding of deadlines, milestones, and the specifics. Within those, you should be able to identify what the funders' priorities and objectives are for this particular program of work, and that you might also want to look at what's their wider priorities and objectives and how do they relate to this piece of work. And then finally, you're going to assess whether you align with the eligibility criteria and objectives. So, you know, we call it a kind of no bid, no go thing within the construction industry, where you might have thought that an opportunity was really exciting, read thoroughly all the tender documentation that came with it, looked into the client, understood what they were trying to achieve through this contract or activity, and then recognize that what you do, the service that you offer or the activity that you deliver, does not align to either the contract and or the client. Okay, work on the basis that it does and that you're going to move forward. So programming, so understanding key dates and milestones and developing a program that makes sure that all the things that need to be done are done in time is the next important step. So as part of that, you would create a timeline for the proposal development and then link that to the submission deadline. And you would always want to be ready to submit at least 24 hours before. So if there's any issues about uploading or portals or handing something in, that you've got time once you've finished to address those. So you would need to identify the deadlines, as we've said, but also what are the deliverables? So what is that application process asking you to demonstrate or to show to do within that grant application process? And then as part of that, you would assign the team roles and responsibilities. So there might be people within your wider team or even outside of your team. You might be working in partnership with other organizations. So be really clear about who's doing what and when does it need to be done by, and to what level of detail and quality does it need to be done by. Okay. And in our sector, we talk about storyboarding the proposal. So that would be about visualizing the structure of your proposal. So if you had 4 questions within that, let's say, you know, demonstrate how you will have a positive impact on this community, as an example, you would go through that as a storyboard and develop something that gives you an opportunity to bullet point and list all of the things that need to be covered to answer that question or that requirement fully. As part of that storyboarding process, you would ensure a logical flow of the information. So if something was really important to answer 3, you would need to introduce it, you know, as part of that answer, or perhaps earlier on, because it's such a fundamental aspect of how you work. And then you would need to align the sections through that storyboarding process with the funders' criteria and expectations and their objectives. So you might, through your storyboarding process, say, right, we need to develop an introduction. And through that introduction, we need to show how we align with the objectives of the funder before you went into the detail of the specific questions. Okay, so within that storyboarding process, you need to be asking yourself, what makes us stand out in this area? You know, why us? Why would this client, this funder choose us? And what information do we need to include within it to make sure that that's really coming through? As I've said, you would go through it in terms of information and content that you need for each different section or question, and then make sure that the right people who can answer that and produce that information are involved in the development of the submission. You would need to identify other additional people who would be involved in the delivery of this project or contract. Who are they, and do we need to ensure that they're engaged in this process and that we've got all the information that you need about who they are, what they do. You would identify who's responsible for the application. So who needs to support this? If you need to get sign off for your application or your tender response, then how do you kind of manage that within the program? So when does it need to go to them so that they can review it, feedback on it, and make sure that you meet that deadline? Are there any graphics or images that you want to use? You know, there can be graphics and images can be a very engaging way of reaching or your reader. So how can you use graphic and images within this response should be a question that you ask at the storyboarding stage. And also, what's the relevant case study information that we need? So how do we demonstrate to this funder that we've done this before, that we know what we're doing, or that we've done this thing and we've learned this particular set of things from it, and that's going to make sure that we're able to deliver and meet your objectives. Okay, so if we move on to addressing gaps and engaging experts. So you might, through that process, identify that there are gaps in knowledge or expertise, either within the team that's responsible for developing the application and or delivery of that you might need to work with other partners to ensure that you can meet all of the requirements of the application. And so the next step of that, once you've identified that, is to engage with subject matter experts who might fill those gaps. So that's a term that we use within the industry I worked in, but you know, it's what it says on the tin. So it's people who know or who do that activity that you're looking to describe. You might engage with them, ask them a set of questions, make sure that you understand what good looks like in relation to their area of expertise so that you can properly represent that within the application. And that process should encourage feedback and collaboration through that proposal writing process so that you've got different people inputting into it so that you're really adding value to the final output. Okay, we would say that a review process is really important, and you would, at the start, when you're doing your program, you would need to understand how many rounds of review does this need to go through. Do we develop it? If you're working on your own, it's always good to have somebody else look at it to give you some feedback on things that you've missed or things that you could say in a different way. So you need to plan, and then governance-wise, it might need to get a final sign-off from somebody more senior in your organisation. So you need to make sure that there's time built into the programme for those reviews. You might develop a checklist. You might be provided with a checklist, but if not, you might develop one to ensure that all the requirements are met. If there are kind of multiple submission requirements, including maybe your insurance or something like that, use a checklist to make sure you can tick them all off and make sure that you've definitely delivered everything that you've been asked to. And there's an opportunity through the review process to gather feedback from stakeholders outside of your immediate team and use that. This is, you know, if this is an application that's really important, make sure that you're building on your ideas for delivery or process for delivery through stakeholder engagement. So we'll look at effective ways for presenting work and its impact within that proposal. So within your proposal, you'll want to clearly define project activities and expected outcomes. So we will do this and it will achieve that, rather than just we will do this. Really link it back to those objectives. And if you are going to say that you're going to deliver outcomes, then you need to say how those outcomes will be measured and how they will be evaluated, so that you can be really confident that they've been met, and that also the funder or the client can be really confident that they've met. And in relation to outcomes, you might want to identify what are your short-term outcomes, and then what are the long-term impacts for groups and individuals that you support. So really, make a distinction between those two, so that the funder can see the legacy that will be delivered through your involvement and engagement. So co-design is an expression that we hear more and more fairly frequently. And it is really important that consultation and co-design are the ways in which you develop activities and a programme of work that meets the needs of different stakeholders. So that's back to engaging with your stakeholders and, critically, your beneficiaries. So if you're saying we're going to do this activity and it's going to create these benefits for the people that we work with, make sure that those are benefits which are meaningful for that group. And in doing that, you're able to incorporate their feedback and their ideas into your proposal. So we engaged with this group, we asked them this, they said that these were their priorities. On the basis of that, we've developed this, or we've tweaked our programme in this way to ensure that we can meet those benefits. And it's always important to demonstrate community involvement in project planning and execution. So, if you're going to run a project, how might project beneficiaries or the wider community be involved in the evaluation of that project? So a really good way to bring a proposal to life is through storytelling, and you do that through case studies. So it's a very powerful way of saying we have the capability and the skills to do this particular thing, because here's an example told through somebody else's story of where we've done it before. So here you're using real life examples and success stories to illustrate and add value to your proposal, and to give the reader of that proposal real confidence that you will be able to deliver what you're saying you will. So within those case studies, you need to highlight the community impact that you've delivered through similar projects to show that how your skill set is transferable. And in addition, this makes the narrative much more engaging and relatable to funders. So the reader, it's a much more enjoyable read when you're learning about the impacts that activity has had through real life stories. So an example of how we've done that in proposals and in reports that we've sent up to our client is that we've looked at the kind of personal experience of people who are engaged on the project. So here's an example of Henry. He's a QS. He's a local he's a local person, and he came engaged through the project, through hearing about the project through a school assembly talk, a careers talk, and on the basis of that he got all excited about moving into construction, decided he wanted to be a quantity surveyor, and applied on that basis. And Henry's now moving up to his level 6 apprenticeship, so he's a positive story. Next, if we move on to how you might use social value measurement tools to demonstrate and quantify the impacts that you're having. So these are free tools. You can use free tools through Social Value Portal. You can have access to the National TOMS framework for free, and you can use that to say, we delivered 10 employment opportunities in the last project. As a result of that, we delivered X amount of pounds in social return on investment. And then that gives a real confidence and strength to your proposal as well. And then you can use those measurement tools to outline in your proposal how you will measure the impacts that you're going to have on this particular piece of work. And then you're kind of backing up your claims with data, aren't you? And that you're going to be able to provide that data to the funder, who in turn can use that data to support the work that they're doing, or answer, if it was a local authority as an example, answer to their governance, the people within their governance structures as well. So if we look here at the national TOMs, and we've got another social value session, social value 1, that looks in more detail at national TOMs. We'll give you an example of how you might use it. So the national TOMs has 5 themes. It was developed by the local government association and social value portal, and is heavily used by local authorities. I think that's a fair description, for quantifying social value impacts delivered through grants and through contracts managed by local authorities. So it's got 5 themes, and the themes are currently being updated, so you can go into the social value portal and make sure that you're using the most up-to-date TOMs and themes. So there are 5 areas. The first one is jobs, so local skills and employment, creating those opportunities for people, particularly people who experience disadvantage. The second is growth, looking about how you operate as a responsible organisation within your local economy. So who do you engage with in your supply chain? What measures do you put in place around things like modern slavery risk to make sure that you're operating responsibly? The third is social. So how do you contribute to healthier, safer and more resilient communities through the activities that you undertake? The fourth is environment. So what do you do that is contributing towards the decarbonisation and safeguarding of our world? And then innovation. So the innovation is the 5th one, and that looks at innovation by working across 2 or more themes at the same time. So you might have a particular project that looks at is focused on the environment, but through its delivery engages hard to reach people within skills and employment activities. So that innovation is around bringing those 2 themes and those outcomes together. Each theme has a set of outcomes attached to it, and each theme has more than one outcome, and each outcome has a set of measures, more than one measure attached to it. So taking the top blue one here, in the theme of jobs, we've got one outcome, which is more opportunities for disadvantaged people, and then the measure of one of the measures of that is the number of ex-offenders employed, but it might be the number of long-term unemployed people employed or number of veterans employed. Each measure has a unit of measure. So in this example, it's the number of people and its full-time equivalent, so the number of people who are employed for a year, and each unit has a value associated with it. So if you were going to employ 10 ex-offenders using this unit of measure, you could say that you've generated 233,000 return on investment. So return on investment being social value within your local economy. So when you're developing your proposal, there's a whole range of measures that aren't necessarily around employment, but there are softer measures as well. You can use the TOMs to say, we're going to deliver this, and as part of that delivery, not only will you get the thing that you're doing, so let's say you were volunteering in a community centre and running a forest school for children, that not only would you deliver that forest school, but the volunteering that is delivered would also produce its own social return on investment outcome. So think about how you could or would want to use social value impact measurement within your proposals, either for things that you've done in the past or as a way of saying, we're going to do this, therefore the return on investment will be that. So we have, through our own reporting, we use Power BI dashboards to report on the social value targets that we're delivering against. So we have 9 different targets that we're reporting on that are broken down in different ways on this dashboard. And you can see how we've used social value measurement and reporting and graphics and illustration to kind of create at a glance performance illustration, a graphic like that. So, you can see the things in green are going very well. There's one thing that isn't under volunteering, but that rather than a lot of words saying that graphic there within a proposal says those things in a way which is more engaging to the reader, doesn't use as many words as well if you are word restricted on your proposal. Okay, that's the end of the session. Thank you very much.